Roos?
Oh, hi! I'm just showering with my plants in my new bathroom. Let's talk all about moss poles. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new, my name is Roos, my pronouns are she, her, and today we're gonna talk all about moss poles, their care, which ones I like, and we're finally gonna take care of them because I've been ignoring them for about 3 months in our home renovation situation, and I now finally have a beautiful bathroom that is perfect for taking care of them. Before we hop in the shower together, let's collect the plants from all over the house. There's several moss poles here in the living room. We have yellow variegated Monstera deliciosa, El Choco Red, and Ferry, who I'm just gonna roll because he's heavy. On this side of the living room, we have Majestic, Spencer the Splendid, Rupert the Florida Beauty, and Thijs, the Thai Constellation. Oh, and one in the terrarium, the Brill Marks Fantasy, but because that's in a high humidity environment, that actually stays nice and moist. Upstairs where the sun is shining, we have a few plants on moss poles, like this, you can't see it because it's so bright, Scindapsus, Jade Satin Variegated, and then Glorious on a very long moss pole, and Gigas. We also have a few plants that I want to put on a moss pole, like my Billy Variegated, and these plants have to be potted up and put on a moss pole. And actually my Anthuriums that grow here above the bed, they don't have a moss pole, but they have something similar. You can see it quite nicely here. For these Anthurium, I chose to just put moss around the base, so they have the effect of a moss pole, but they grow quite slowly, so they don't need a whole pole. I could do with a little, I could do with a little sleeve around here so that it stays more moist. Whew. It's really hot up here with the new windows, so almost luckily time to get in the shower. The next one here is Black Jack. I showed you him many times before, and he also has a lot of moss around the base. And that's enough for now. He doesn't need a pole. The last one is this little one. This is actually already... Can you hear that? The moss is already dried out a lot. So that is why people sometimes put a little plastic sleeve around it. Or even just cling film to help prevent it drying out so fast. Because I only put this moss up maybe 1 week ago. Monstera I would give a moss pole as well. But these have only just started growing. Can you see the little point there? So they don't need it yet. Welcome to the bathroom. If you are watching the renovation series, this is gonna spoil the bathroom results a little bit, so you might want to wait until after Sunday to watch this. Let's move the plants in. My crystallinum in here is beautiful, but he lives in the shower every day, so he doesn't need the attention today. And same with my Regal and King of Spades. I'm very lucky that I have a special tap in here by Gardena for the plants, which I'll show you more about in one of the renovation videos. But today we're also going to use the rain showers that we got installed. We not only have one rain shower, but two, because we often shower together, and because our bathroom gets so cold, or used to get so cold in winter, we would fight over the warm water. And now we don't have to anymore. The first plant we're taking care of is Ferry, and he's really, really big. So we're just gonna spray him down and then roll him straight back out because he's taking up way too much space for all of us together in the shower. That's gold. When watering the smaller pots, they will likely lose some soil, which I don't want in our beautiful new golden drain. So I have a few ways to prevent that, like little saucer thingies. But this is my first time trying this, so I don't know how it's gonna work. Let it warm up first. I don't really know what I'm doing, but let's just get in the shower. I also have to wash my hair, so that's coming after, but won't be in this video. Just making sure that the water is not too hot, because I don't think they want hot like we do. This is better. Okay, ready? Oh, that feels nice. I normally don't have my glasses on in the shower, but I can't see without them. This Queen Anthurium has a new leaf, so I'm sure that will like getting some moisture. I keep looking at you to make sure the camera doesn't fog up. You can start to see the moss getting some water, and I'm so excited to see it. Look at these roots, they're gonna be so much happier after this. With this one I can really see there's water coming past the moss here, but it's just not absorbing it, and that's why we're doing it shower style and not just spraying them. I normally of course have the glass door closed, but with filming I thought I'd leave it open, and I'm kind of soaking the bathroom floor. Whoops! Okay, let's see. It still sounds dry. So we're gonna do another round of watering, but this time with the Gardena hose, because that has a little bit more pressure and can push itself hopefully a little bit more inside the moss. This is just my theory, it's not scientific or anything. Of course you have to be a little bit careful with this method because the pots are full of water now. So I'm gonna pour that out and then let the plants sit and hopefully soak up a little bit more of the water in the moss. Oh, it's so full. The squeezing can also help to get the water to different spaces. This is another example of where it looks it looks watered from the front, but when you look in the back, I don't know if you can see, there's a line here that is wet and then the rest of it is still very dry. So this needs another round. There will definitely be some bloopers. I did the third round while I washed my hair and just wanted to show you an example of how not to do this. This pot is so full of water that when I pull it out, I pull the plant out of the pot instead of the pot out of the outer pot. There you go. Ah, come on. Come on. So that's not recommended. Okay, my hair is a little bit more dry. My plants have dried up a little bit, not the moss hopefully, but let's continue talking about moss poles. The main question I get asked is, where do you get yours from? Or where do you source the materials from? And I actually don't source the materials. I get them as a flat pack from a company, Moss Poles on Instagram. They send this backing that's opaque a little bit, and then tie rips and the metal part, and all you have to add yourself is moss. They have them in two different sizes. This is the smaller size, which I really like for small plants that you start on them and then you can extend them out here. I like this one because the plastic backing makes it a little bit easier to water in your house, which I will talk about in a minute. Because first I want to show you Ferry's one, which is all around moss. I got this from Trofolia, a company in Canada. And they are really nice because the plant can grow all around, which for Ferry of course is amazing because he's so full and bushy now. But it does come with some challenges, especially when I water. I usually spray them with my Gardena sprayer, and when you spray the plastic ones, it just goes into the metal part and doesn't go past the plastic. But if you spray around one, everything around it also gets sprayed a little bit, so that's something to keep in mind. And that also means that I'm really much worse at keeping this one moist than the other ones. Hi, Editing Rose here. I just wanted to add that yes, most Monstera do like and prefer a moss pole. The exception is the large form Monstera deliciosa, so Thai constellations for example, they don't need one because their nodes are very close together, their stems are very thick. For me, I do have one on mine because otherwise it's gonna fall over and crawl over the floor as it would in nature, and I would prefer mine to be a little bit more upright. For my Thai constellation, I actually used a coconut pole from a garden center. Those are very easy to get in most garden centers. They're a little bit less high moisture because it doesn't hold on to as much moisture as moss does, which also means that they don't attach as well. But it takes less care. You can just leave them. You don't actually have to spray or water them. And the only reason why I had to take these in the shower today and spray them like we did is because I let them dry out too much. If you take better care of them, you can just spray them. I check them every week or so. You can just spray them a little bit, keep the moss wet that way. And that should prevent them from becoming as crispy as mine were. It also helps if you put them in a higher humidity environment, like the ones in my terrariums. I don't have to water often or at all. And I'm hoping that that will be the case for the bathroom as well, where I would like to grow some more moss poles. Another question is, why do you use, or why do I need to use moss poles? Is it worth it? Because it does cost some money and some extra time as well. And I think it's definitely worth it. If you think about it, how these plants grow in nature, especially all the philodendrons behind me. Philodendron literally translates to tree lover. So they crawl up the trees. If you've ever been to the tropics, you will know what I mean. You'll see the plants starting very small at the base of a tree and then climbing up them and becoming huge and amazing at the top. Now I, in my house, don't have any trees, and the trees outside, the climate is too cold for them to grow. So the moss pole is a pretend tree, basically. It can catch onto it like it would on the bark of a tree. It can root into it and get moisture and nutrients from the moss, and often also grow all the way down into the pot, into the soil. So it actually extends the pot a little bit. There's a bunch of roots, especially on this plant. There's a ton of roots in here. And the support that the moss pole gives the plant helps it to size up. Now this is a little bit of a bad example for sizing up. This is a, better example. So here down at the bottom, actually a lot of my old leaves have died off because of the renovation chaos, but the leaves are smaller, and then as it keeps growing up the tree moss pole, the leaves get bigger and longer and more mature. So you actually also see, I'm getting all of them up close. You see that with this plant as well. This is what the current leaves look like, ignoring the brown. Down here you can see the smaller leaves that were a much more juvenile form of this plant. So that is also a great reason to grow on moss poles. And if you've ever seen Jan's content, Sydney Plant Guy, then you can really see what these plants can become. Mine are actually still quite small. Then the next question is, how do we grow them on a moss pole? I like to start small. So for example, when I have a plant like this is my variegated Billietiae. This is just starting to get a little stem branch kind of thing here. This is when I would put it on a moss pole so that it gets the nice humidity from the moss as well, and it can continue growing and hopefully attach to the moss pole and then start sizing up, because my current Billietiae leaves are very, very small and I would like them to be much bigger. Often when it's a small plant, like here's my Monstera obliqua, this needed some support. It was very wobbly in general, but I didn't want to give it a full moss pole yet because it was so tiny, and when it's a little bit weird when you put a huge moss pole on a tiny plant. So what I did instead was, I don't know if you'll be able to see with all the moss, but down here, it's a little bit dark as well. There is two little metal wire thingies that I put on each side of the plant to give it some stability, and that definitely helped. You can see how the leaves have started to size up like here, and now it has a little branch here. So this is the perfect time to put it on a moss pole, because I can put the moss pole on this side, the branch can keep going and hopefully attach the roots, because there's little aerial roots here already. They can start to attach to the moss and then be happier and help the plant to size up quicker. If you have a bigger plant or a more mature plant that you want to put on a moss pole, you can definitely also do that. You can see here how I attached this one with some plant Velcro to the pole. So you just take the branch and attach it and try and get the nodes to attach to the moss, because that will help them to activate some more roots, some aerial roots that then become moss roots. There's cat hairs all over this thing. Or if it is a smaller plant like this one, you can also use the little hair clips. They work very well as well because they can attach to the metal wire and the plant stem. Just make sure that you don't crush the plant. For the flat pack moss poles, people asked what kind of moss do you use? I use sphagnum moss, which I think most of us do. It's good to know that this is a finite resource. So it's good to be very careful with it, mindful of it. I actually reuse it all the time, and moss poles is a perfect way to use old moss that isn't fit for your other types of growing anymore. So small pieces, they will stay stuck in the plastic so they won't fall apart. And I love reusing moss that way. I get my sphagnum moss from Soil Ninja. You can use my code PLANTWITHROSE for a discount. I'll write my affiliate link in the description as well. But you can also fill these moss poles with other mediums. I've seen people using leca or other semi-hydro things that are big enough to not fall through the holes, of course. You can also use cocoa chips or soil. Whatever works for you, try it. Someone asked, can you make the moss too dense so that it kills the roots? And I don't think, I've never had that issue. I like to pack them in quite dense actually, because it prevents it drying out too quickly. If you're in a perfect environment, then probably can make it a little bit more fluffy. For me, that doesn't work because I'm not very organized, and also my environment is not ideal for them. So I pack it in quite tight, not so that it can't move anymore. But still, I think I put quite a lot in there. I don't know, it's not necessarily something I tested with. I just went on what felt right, and it's been working pretty well so far. By far the most asked question is, how often do you water and how do you water? I check my plants every week, or I should say I used to check my plants every week before the renovation. Right now I don't have a schedule at all, which is why they got so bad. But I'm gonna try and reinstate Friday watering days again. So every week I check my plants, and then I also check the moss poles. Usually they don't need water every week, but I try to have the sprayer with me as I water, and then just give all the moss poles a little spray to keep them moist. Although I don't think they need to stay moist all the time. If you think about it, in nature, there's also dry periods. It's not like it's raining all day every day and the tree's bark stays moist all the time. I let my aeroids dry out a lot in the pot as well, the soil, so the roots can handle drying out. I think the same goes for in the moss, unless you let it dry out as much as I did, where the moss becomes so crispy that if you do spray or water it, it doesn't take up the water for a little bit. So then you have to do this whole process of taking a shower with your plants to rehydrate the moss. But in general, I think letting it dry out a little bit is fine. It doesn't have to stay moist all the time. That's just my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm not Jan. And then someone also asked about fertilizer. Do I fertilize the moss and how often? I actually don't. But that's mainly because of it taking too much time. I'd have to put fertilizer in this sprayer thing, and that just doesn't work in my brain. Taking care of these plants is already a lot of mental overstimulation at the moment. So I do fertilize the pots when I water the plants at the bottom. And I do want to start fertilizing the moss poles. From what I've heard, you look at it like you would fertilize semi-hydro, so a less strong mixture, and then pour it just in the moss. You can do that with the sprayer, like I said, or with watering however you water your moss poles. I know Jan uses bottles and puts them upside down on top of them. Maybe I should start trying that. I don't know if it would work. From what I've seen, if I water by pouring water in, which I've tried before, it often comes out the front and doesn't actually water the moss as much. So I'm gonna experiment with that and we'll come back to you. I've only been growing on moss poles maybe a few years. Before that, actually, I used to often just put a bamboo stake and then maybe add some moss around it. So I would kind of build a moss pole as I went. So just at the part where the plant was, there would be some moss, and then add some moss as it grew, which I think is also a really good method. And even without the moss, if you give your plant a little bit of support, it can be a bamboo stake or a plank of wood, just any type of support so that it feels like it's climbing up something, that can definitely help to increase your plant sizes and make them happy like they would be in nature. One more important thing to talk about with moss poles is what do you do when it reaches the end? Someone said my plant is growing way too quickly, it's reaching the end. How do you tame it? How do you keep it to the moss pole? And the method that I use, I learned from Jan. This is basically an ode to Jan, Sydney plant guy. He knows much more about this than I do, so if you want to check out his content, I highly recommend. What he does is a method called chop and extend. So this is the small size moss pole that I usually start with, and you can see that this plant is almost at the top of it. So the next step is to make another moss pole, slide it over here and attach it like this majestic. Look at how beautiful that is. In the back here, you can see where I attached the two. So there's some overlap here, and then it can continue growing on the moss pole. This is really nice because it keeps the size of the plant. It can continue growing from the top growth and can continue increasing in leaf size. But of course, our houses are not unlimited height. So what Jan figured out is that once this gets too tall for your space, you can take off the bottom moss pole. So I would cut the plant here and take this apart and repot the top part in fresh soil so that it can re-root in there and continue growing on the moss pole as it did already. And the plant doesn't get a lot of stress from that because it's also rooted in the moss pole itself. So it's not losing all of its roots like it would if you just propagate the plant. And then the bottom part, you can either grow out again, or in this case, this poor gigas doesn't have a lot of leaves down here. So I would cut it into nodes, and then I would be able to share it with my friends, taking the moss pole apart, getting the roots out, and then having a lot more plants, which I think is a very, very smart and cool method to do things in. Hi, me in my cozy sweater again. I just wanted to add, this question came in after I finished filming. I've never had an issue with fungus gnats in my moss poles, actually. I don't know if other people do have that issue, but for fungus gnats, I use nematodes and sticky plates to catch them. Nematodes are little tiny bugs that you pour into the soil with water, and they are like larvae that eat the fungus gnat larva. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. I'm not a scientist, but I've never had this issue. So if anyone has had this issue and has an amazing solution, please let us know in the comments below. Maybe you could also pour the nematodes into the moss poles a little bit. You'd have to experiment, but maybe there's some great solutions in the comments below. I think it's time for me to clear up this mess that I've made. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe below if you haven't already, and leave a nice comment. You can also join my Patreon or YouTube memberships for extra content and a private Discord chat. And if you're in the chatty planter level, a monthly Zoom call with me where we talk all about plants. Thank you so much for being here, and I think it's time for some bloopers. I kind of ruined my moss here. Sorry, buddy. Oh, there's more moss. There's different kinds. Okay, we're gonna take some moss out in a minute. I can put that in a cute terrarium. ADHD much? Yes.